Okay, you know what? I'm going to operate under the assumption that you're not being facetious and you genuinely want to know.
Okay, so because we've been fed a duopoly our entire lives, a lot of people tend to stick between two extremes and they forget about the middle ground. It affects arbitrary things like Apple, Samsung, Coke, Pepsi, having pineapple on your pizza or not having any pizza at all. But it also affects very serious things like economic structures. So a lot of times you're seeing people exist in between these two extremes. Capitalism is evil, or all gas, no brakes capitalism, or as I like to call it, you gotta break a few eggs to make some money capitalism. The problem with this extremely limited view is it removes all opportunity for the center. Not only does existing only in these two bubbles lack creativity, but left unfettered, both of them tend to lead to extreme problems. Right smack in the middle is where constructive capitalism tends to shine. Now, the trick to constructive capitalism is that it requires basic human empathy. We're going to put a pin on constructive capitalism. We're going to come back to that so that we can answer your questions. Besides the fact that you get teary-eyed because of basic human empathy, tell me how that's going to help our nation lower prices on day-to-day goods, inflation, security, etc. Again, we're operating under the assumption that you have the best intentions, so this is a very good question. Here's some of the ways basic human empathy can impact our nation and various socioeconomic factors. First up, we have lowering prices and inflation. Worker productivity. Historically, increased productivity has dampened inflation. Where does empathy come in? Well, empathetic policies in the workplace can lead to higher employee satisfaction and productivity, which can reduce costs associated with high turnover and low efficiency. Next up, we have consumer behavior. Businesses that show empathy towards their customers build loyalty and trust. This leads to more stable demand and potentially lower prices as companies can plan better with steady revenue streams. Let's talk improving security. From a community trust standpoint, empathy in law enforcement can improve relationships between the police and the community, which leads to better cooperation, less crime, and enhanced security overall. An example of what this would look like in the real world is instead of sitting in their cars posting up and waiting for a call, police officers should be meeting and knowing who is in their community or the area that they're in charge of. They should be knocking on every single door, leaving their card, and doing it every single time that they have to be out there so that people become familiar with them and build relationships. It's community policing. Basic human empathy. Empathy also contributes to social cohesion. Policies that address the needs and concerns of marginalized companies reduce social tensions and prevent conflicts, which can lead to a more secure society. The call is coming from inside the house. It's not weird to you that America is as divided as it is, like we're not all Americans? Empathy fosters understanding and bridges divides between different social, economic, and political groups, contributing to national unity and stability. When it comes to mental health, empathetic healthcare policies that address mental health issues can lead to a healthier population, reducing the burden on the healthcare system and improving overall societal well-being. Also, C, community trust. On the topic of policy making, empathy leads to the creation of more inclusive policies that consider the needs of all of the American citizens. Factoring everybody into the equation means that there's a more equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. Okay, I know that rung some alarm bells in your head, but we're not saying that we're going to take from you. It's saying everybody gets some. Innovation. This might be the most important. An empathetic approach to education and job training fosters creativity and innovation, which drives economic growth and development. I don't know if you know this, but a huge part of the reason why climate change deniers say that climate change is not a problem is because they have faith in human innovation. Wouldn't it make sense to have all hands on deck? I know that something like this can be difficult to grasp, but empathy is not just an emotional response. It's a practical approach to policy making and governance. What would be the result of America having a more productive workforce? America having stronger consumer trust? America having improved security and enhanced social cohesion? What would happen if America had more effective and inclusive policies? How would that contribute to a stronger and stable nation? I know, that sounds crazy. This is all theory, right? It's not. In fact, I'm going to show you a company that's doing it right now, and this is not an ad. I just think it's really cool what they're doing. For me, personally, it's a really strong example of how capitalism can be constructive if we put all of the minds to it. Okay, for our case study, we're going to use Dr. Bronner's. You've definitely seen their soap before. While I like their soap, it lasts forever. What I like more is how they do business. Not only do they go out of their way to make it super transparent with where their money is going, all companies have to do an annual report, but not all companies publish as publicly as Dr. Bronner's does. But they do business in a way that makes you wonder what would be the impact if larger corporations decided to take on a model like this or something similar. For example, to embody constructive capitalism, when it comes to their profit, they cap executive salaries at 5 times their lowest paid fully vested position. So that means that at any point in time, the CEOs are not making more than 5 times the lowest paid employee, which is huge considering the average for CEOs in like larger corporate spaces, we're talking like FANGs, MANGs, is like 275 times the amount of the lowest paid employee. Not just that, they're actively engaged in multiple nonprofit organizations. The rest of their money outside of their raw materials, their employee pay, the rest of those profits go to charity and invigorating the community. Another pillar of their constructive capitalism is constructive investing and lending. They provide seed money, essentially acting like venture capitalists in order to help organizations and companies find innovative ways to change markets, to transform models of production. It's almost like there's a benefit to using capital to incentivize innovation. All of these things require empathy. You don't do things like focusing on building equitable supply chains without having empathy for where you are getting your supplies from. That empathy allows Dr. Bronner to pay a 10% premium to a community fund that's connected to each of the suppliers' businesses that they source from. Those funds are directed to community development projects selected by a committee made up of suppliers, farmers, community members, and other local partners. Rather than imposing what we think these communities might need from an outside perspective, local community members determine what they believe will make a positive impact in their communities. Empathy is required. Unfettered capitalism can only take us so far. We've already done the thing. We have more business majors than anyone. But where does business without humanities and ethics lead us? Business without empathy is destruction.